It was the 10th month of Bunye 11, what the foreigners would later call November of the year 1274. I am Takezaki Suenaga, a Gokenin of Higo Province, a humble vassal sworn to the shogun in Kamakura. At 29 years of age, I had known the life of a warrior in the provinces, training with bow and blade, riding the hills, settling minor disputes over land with my kin. My holdings were small, and a recent quarrel over territory had left my fortunes thin. But when the urgent reports reached us from the north that the great fleet of the Mongol Khan had crushed Tsushima and then Iki, slaughtering the defenders and leaving the islands in ruin, a fire kindled in my chest. This was no border skirmish or clan feud. This was an invasion from across the sea by warriors said to have conquered half the known world. Messengers rode hard through the provinces, calling every able samurai and his retainers to Hakata Bay. I gathered what I could, my horse, strong and steady from years of campaign, my oyuroi, armor, its iron plates and lacquered scales bound with silk cords, heavy on my shoulders, yet flexible enough for the saddle, my yumi, the long asymmetric bow that had served my family for generations, a quiver of arrows with broad heads for piercing armor and whistling signaling shafts, my tachi sword at my side, sharp and curved for the draw, and 5 loyal retainers armed with naginata, polearms, and shorter blades. We rode north without delay, the autumn air, crisp, the rice fields golden under the pale sun. Along the roads, other bands joined us, samurai from Hizen, Higo, and beyond, their banners fluttering, faces set with the quiet resolve of men who knew their duty to lord and land. We reached the vicinity of Hakata under gray skies. The bay stretched before us, a natural harbor, sheltered by headlands, its waters usually busy with trade ships from Song China and beyond. Now it was a place of omen. Scouts brought word the enemy armada was immense, hundreds of vessels with black sails carrying tens of thousands, Mongols, Koreans, conscripted Chinese from the fallen Song dynasty. They had already landed in force along the beaches between Hakata and Hakozaki, establishing positions. Our commanders, including the Shoni clan leaders and Muto Kageseke, under whom I served, ordered us to hold and await full assembly. The terrain near the shore was soft and muddy in places, treacherous for horses. Do not rush forward, they warned. Wait for the signal and the main strength. But as the mist lifted on the morning of the 20th, impatience burned in me like fever. I had not come all this way to stand idle while barbarians despoiled our coast. Waiting for the general will only make us late to the battle, I told my retainers. My brother-in-law, Mitsui Sukenaga, rode with me, along with a few others. We pressed ahead, a small band seeking contact with the foe. First, we encountered a detachment of the enemy, perhaps a scouting party or vanguard. They wore thick padded armor and leather jerkins reinforced with iron, carrying straight spears and short, powerful bows. We charged with the old custom. I called out my name and lineage, seeking worthy combat, but they answered not with boasts or challenges. Instead, they loosed arrows in a coordinated volley. My group forced them back in a sharp clash, and we claimed 2 heads as proof of our deed. Word came that Kikuchi Takefusa had already engaged and scattered a similar group nearby. The pirates, as some called them in scorn, seemed to melt away before organized resistance. Emboldened, we pushed toward the main landing. The beach ahead teemed with them, thousands upon thousands pouring from longboats and larger ships beached or anchored close. Their formations were tight, shielded by large rectangular boards that carried forward like a moving wall. Red banners snapped in the sea breeze. Drums and gongs boomed across the sand, a rhythmic thunder that echoed off the hills and set our horses' ears flicking in unease. These were not the scattered raids of old. This was disciplined war on a scale we had never seen. A signaling arrow whistled from our lines, thin and high-pitched, its sound meant to invoke the gods and announce honorable battle. The Mongols heard it and laughed aloud, their voices carrying over the din. Then their response came. Arrows flew in black clouds, shorter and thicker than ours, loosed from composite bows that could strike with accuracy at twice the range of my yumi. Some tips glistened with poison that would burn through veins like liquid fire. Explosive shells arced overhead from their catapults, round casings of iron and paper packed with strange powder. When they struck or burst in the air, they roared like thunder, spitting flame and smoke that stung the eyes and choked the throat. The ground shook. Horses reared wildly, screaming in panic. Some bolted or threw their riders before a blade was even drawn. My own mount trembled beneath me, its flanks quivering as the noise rolled like waves. We samurai answered as we knew how. Small groups charged, mounted archers, loosing arrows on the gallop, then closing with naginata thrusts and sword cuts. Forward, I shouted to my men. We wheeled and struck, seeking to break their lines through speed and individual valor. The clash was a storm of steel and cries. Their foot soldiers held ranks, spears jabbing in unison, while crossbows sang from behind shields. My bannerman's horse took multiple arrows and collapsed in a spray of sand and blood, pinning him momentarily. Pain lanced my side as an arrow or bolt found a gap in my armor, hot blood soaking the underpadding. 3 of my retainers were hit as well, their groans mixing with the roar. My horse bucked violently, an arrow buried deep in its flank, blood gushing in rhythmic spurts. I felt the animal's strength failing, its legs buckling on the soft, churned ground. I leaped clear just as the press grew thickest, landing hard but rising with tachi in hand. The air reeked of smoke from their bombs, the metallic tang of blood, churned mud, and the sharp sweat of fear and exertion. Around me, samurai hacked and thrust, blades ringing against enemy armor that turned many cuts. Our long swords bit deep when they connected, severing limbs or finding throats, but their padded jerkins and scales blunted blows that would have felled a lesser foe. Some of our weapons snapped against the heavier protection, yet we pressed relentlessly, small bands wheeling like hawks, charging again and again wherever a gap appeared. The fighting stretched through the morning and into the afternoon. We gave ground slowly at first, then pushed back in fierce counterattacks along the coast. The enemy began to waver near Sohara, their disciplined formations cracking under our repeated assaults. It was then that Shiroishi Rokuro Michiyasu thundered in from the rear with a strong force of fresh riders. His charge was magnificent, over 100 horsemen plunging straight into the thick of the Mongols, lances and swords flashing, hooves pounding the sand. They cut a bloody path, relieving the pressure on our scattered groups. Without his timely arrival, I and my surviving companions would surely have been overwhelmed there on the blood-soaked beach, our bodies left for the tide. I fought on foot now, wounded but unyielding, my retainers rallying around me. We took heads where we could, grim trophies to present later for reward and recognition from the bakufu. The strange weapons of the foe sowed terror even among the bravest, the booming gongs that coordinated their advances like one great beast, the poison that weakened limbs, the bombs that turned disciplined charges into chaos. Their tactics were alien, no calling of names for single combat, no seeking personal glory in duels. They fought as a swarm, advancing or retreating on signals, using massed archery and explosives to break our spirit before closing. By late in the day, as the sun dipped lower and cast long shadows over the bay, we had harried them back toward their ships. Small Japanese boats ventured out under cover of dusk, raiding the anchored fleet, boarding where brave men dared, striking in the cramped decks amid rigging and oars, then slipping away to the gathering dark. The invaders withdrew to their vessels, their beachheads contested and bloodied. That night, a great wind rose from the sea. The waters of Hakata Bay churned into white-capped fury. Waves smashed against hulls, many ships dragged anchors or were driven onto rocks and shoals. By first light, the horizon was strangely clear. The vast armada that had darkened the waters was scattered or fled, their first thrust against our shores broken. We stood amid the debris, broken arrows, discarded shields, the bodies of fallen comrades and foes, and breathed salt air mixed with smoke. My wounds throbbed, my armor dented and stained, but I lived. We had held. In the days that followed, as reports spread and the shogunate tallied deeds, I knew this battle would echo through the ages. The Mongols would return 7 years later with an even mightier host, but that is another tale. On that day, at Hakata, we faced men with ways and weapons beyond our scrolls and traditions, yet samurai steel, courage, and the will to charge when others might have waited proved enough. The gods may have stirred the winds in our favor, as some later claimed, but it was flesh and blood, bow and blade, that met the enemy on the sand and drove them back to the sea. I, Takezaki Suenaga, witnessed it all, the thunder of their drums, the sting of their arrows, the moment my horse fell beneath me, and the fierce joy of rising to fight once more. History lives not in distant edicts or temple prayers alone. It is in the mud beneath your feet, the weight of your armor, the taste of blood and salt on your lips, and the unyielding resolve that turns back the tide of invaders. This is the account as I lived and fought it, in the service of my Lord and the land of the gods.